and welcome back to Dry Conversations. I'm your host, Whitney Cowell. Joining me today is my friend, Laura. Hey,
Hi.
Laura. So for anybody that has not met you before, would you mind telling us who you are and what you've been up to recently?
Sure. My name is Laura, and I am a recovery member of a support group, first of all. And for work, I am in public relations, communications. It's been my background for forever. And I freelance right now, and I've gotten to work with some cool people. So, yeah, I'm a daughter, and I've lived a lot of places, and I'm back in Chattanooga. I grew up in Alabama, Tuscaloosa, and it's good to be back in the South.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, and it's good to have you on the show. It was just by happenstance that we both learned we were in recovery. So Laura and I have met through a mutual hobby.
Yes.
And ended up becoming friends after about a year and a half of continuously seeing each other at least once a week. And I don't know how the conversation got started, but we both realized that we were sober people. And so I would love to just kick off with hearing a little bit about what made you want to be on the show, and then we'll just dive into your addiction, if that's okay.
That's totally fine. So, but like you said, we met actually in ballet.
Yeah.
So I still dance. I danced most of my life, and I don't remember how the conversation started, but I think I said something or you said something that was kind of obviously recovery related. If you're, part of a recovery group, and so I kind of looked at you. And you held up a sweatshirt that said something about,
it
recovery.
Says recovery is it, yeah.
Yeah, and I was
recovery
like,
sweatshirt.
You do?
Yeah.
And it just kind of showed me like, we're everywhere, and this is such a widespread issue.
Yeah.
And, kind of just now becoming a little bit more commonly addressed and talked to, in the mainstream. And I think it's so important that people have resources and know that, addiction or alcoholism or whatever it is that, you deal with. I mean, these were problems that affect all ages, all socioeconomic levels. It really takes hostages kind of throughout. And so I think it's important. And I listened to your podcast, and I've never done anything like this. So I was telling Whitney that I'm a little nervous going through this at first, but it's important.
Yeah,
and
it is. And to your point, like recovery or I guess addiction doesn't discriminate, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to hear all voices of all walks from all people. And so, first of all, thank you for agreeing to do this. And second of all, I want to know like what happened, because you have, from what I've heard, and this is also my first time hearing some of these stories, but you've had a really interesting go around with your addiction.
Yes, I have. And, like anybody's story, a lot of it is not pretty. There are the hard times, and then, rock bottom or getting ready to jump off a ledge, figuratively, is generally how you end up in recovery for whatever your issue is. And that happened, pretty young for me. I went to college in New Orleans, which is a breeding ground for, unhealthy drinking patterns.
Sure.
And, it seemed like I was surrounded, and I was, by friends that were dealing with the same things and, doing the same things. And we thought it was funny, when we would go out and we didn't remember things, and then we would put together stories from the night before. And they were, pretty innocuous back then. I think probably those same things that everybody does in college, but it was just a little bit, more intense. I mean, I had friends, and I would, pass out in bars and have to have friends carry us out. And I mean, just, college, but embarrassing, looking back at it. And, I drank in high school. It wasn't a constant thing, but, on weekends. And
is that when it started for you? Like you had your first drink in high school?
So I had my first drink or first sips in 7th grade.
Okay.
And, we had, I'd been to my first concert with a group of girls that night, my friends, and we were all spending the night at a friend of ours. And she managed to steal 2 beers from
For
her.
a kid, though, that's a lot.
But there were 8 of us.
Sure.
So, and, my drinking, I look back and just always been alcoholic. And so, a lot of people in recovery talk about their first drinks as something that's like, oh, like almost spiritual. And they immediately felt like they fed in, blah, blah, blah. Well, I was really frustrated because, we've passed these 2 beers around and there are 8 of us. And the other girls were like, oh my gosh, I'm so tipsy. And I think I'm drunk. And I can't watch it. And I was like, these girls, like, what? Like, surely not. And somehow I just knew intuitively that I was supposed to feel better. I was supposed to feel more, than what I was feeling. And so it was frustrating. And I don't remember the first time I drank after that. It had never been, a question really. Had never thought about it. I just assumed I would drink, at some point. And, I didn't grow up with firsthand, examples of alcoholism in my home, but there was addiction, to other, behavioral type things.
Sure, yeah.
And, I knew that there was, because I was told from a young age that there was, alcoholism gene in our family, but that doesn't mean much when you're 7 or 8.
No. And honestly, without like real stories and like an educational perspective of it, that didn't mean much to me as like a 22-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't grasp what that meant. There was not a lot of backing to that statement to understand.
Exactly.
And so, and I always had this view and was never corrected on it, which I never brought it forward, but like I always thought that you had to be like this, middle-aged man in a trench coat under a bridge with a brown paper bag,
mm-hmm.
With a tin cup asking for like this like homelessness, borderline alcoholic. Those are the kind of like, that's what that looks like. I had no idea the array of what addiction really looked like, or how it got started, or the patterns, or what that really meant, how to understand those things. And so, yeah, I mean,
exactly.
Of course, as a kid, you hear that and you're like, okay.
Yeah. It's like, what does that
right.
mean? And so, I didn't know that my patterns were alcoholic.
Right.
Until I was probably 24, 25. But I'll tell you that I started noticing that maybe my drinking was different from other people's, or our drinking in New Orleans was not quite the common. I was in Katrina, and I had 1 semester left of school to finish. So I actually finished in Buffalo, New York. A friend of mine went up there. We finished in a college, like I said, in Buffalo. And I just noticed that they didn't drink every night, like they didn't drink at home, just if there were 2, I mean, it just, there were special occasions and parties. But, I started noticing that there was something off. And then I started noticing too, a couple of pretty serious things happened to friends of mine in New Orleans, who I always thought who drank like me, who partied like me, and I kind of started thinking, something is different. And I'd moved to Chicago with a couple of, a group from New Orleans after college. And, my kind of trajectory downward happened quickly. I was drinking, not even drinking every day, but it had been social, I mean, throughout college. And I kind of just assumed I would grow out of it. Because most of my friends
do at that age. We think like it's just a phase, or like I'm in school, I'm partying.
Yeah, exactly. And culture is okay with that. I mean, that's kind of what culture expects.
Everybody has to go through their phase where they make mistakes.
Exactly.
And then for me, it went from that to, well, at least I'm not, and then I'd fill in the blank of other things that I knew other people were doing.
Exactly. This person does this, and this person, at least I'm not.
And it's keep your eyes off of me, because I don't want to focus on what's
happening. I
want
to deflect, and meanwhile, my drinking was becoming more and more isolated. I was drinking at home, and I said, well, I have a good job, so, of course I don't have an issue with drinking, because my mom had kind of started suggesting that there was an issue. yeah, I thought, well, she's just, paranoid because of, what she's seen,
Right.
or she's just oversensitive. And for a while, I was able to get my dad to co-sign that.
Sure.
And, but he realized there was an issue too. And at the end, I was drinking every day alone, after work. And it was getting serious physically. I didn't know that you could be late stage in your 20s, and by 26 I was a late stage alcoholic and suffering physically. And my bottom then was I ended up in ICU. I ended up in the hospital a few times, and I ended up in ICU, and my organs had been failing. I was experiencing things that normal healthy 25-year-olds don't experience, and throwing up blood, and wounds weren't healing, things that I couldn't anymore attribute to anything else.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing, doctors would tell me in the hospital, you have to stop drinking. And
was your skin kind of gray?
It was kind of
because
gray.
I remember standing in the mirror with one of my friends she's like a makeup artist, and she would do our makeup when we would go out and party. And she was like, why do you look so gray? And I was like, I don't know, the lighting must be weird. And then I remember thinking afterwards, like, that's kind of scary.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I mean, surely, like, it's just weird lighting. I don't know. But then when I got sober, I was like, no, that was
alcoholism.
That was alcoholism.
Yeah, and detoxes were terrible. And
so how many times did you try to get sober? Because you said detox is plural.
So I was having to detox, and I didn't realize what it was then, probably from the time I was 24 and 25, because I drank hard liquor and I drank heavily. And the point was at the end to black out, to pass out.
Right.
And that's what I did on weekends. And like I said, I stopped socializing, because it was really safer and more economical to stay at home.
Yeah.
And drink. I wouldn't wake up in strange situations or with, cuts or bruises I didn't know how I got, and, so it was pretty bad. But when I would have to go back to work, Sundays were tough. And I look back on it now and it's just sad to me.
Yeah.
The difference between, if anybody is wondering, a hangover and a detox is a hangover, it's pretty immediate and it goes away as the day goes on. But with detoxing, when your body is used to alcohol, as the alcohol leaves your system, you get sicker and sicker and sicker because your body learns to function and needs alcohol to continue.
Oh yeah, I thought I had the flu when I detoxed because I didn't know what it was.
Exactly.
I didn't know what was happening. It was that was one of the sickest. I mean, other than like COVID and like pneumonia, that was one of the sickest times that I'd ever been.
Well, and at the end, there was no question what it was due to. I'd been to the hospital a couple of times, and so the final straw. And I always said, it had been suggested that I'd maybe go to a treatment program or something like that, for a while. But I was like, no, I still have my job and I can't leave work and I don't know, And so the final time I was in ICU, and my mom walked in, and she had flown up from Chattanooga. My, ex-boyfriend, who was wonderful, we're still friends, had come in to find me because my mom couldn't get a hold of me. And she asked John, she said, will you go and just knock on the door and check on her? I can't get a hold of her and I feel like something's wrong, from 1,000 miles away. And so he came and he got the apartment super to open my door, and they found me, basically passed out, almost dead after a week-long bender of drinking. And
that's so scary.
It's so scary. I should be dead. And hey, puppy. And so took me to the hospital, and he called my mom, and she flew up because she didn't know if I would wake up.
Yeah.
And so she came, and she already had a couple of treatment programs picked out. And I said yes. I was like, yes. So we flew home the day that I got out of the hospital, and I ended up at a treatment center on top of a mountain in Sevierville.
Sure.
So, and it was wonderful. It was, it gave me, it was a 90-day program, and it set the bar for a new standard of living, right? I knew what life could be like sober and without alcohol. And I remember it was it was a parents visiting day, and I realized that I'd had 21 days sober. And I looked at my mom and I wrote that down on a piece of paper and circled it. And I just started crying because it was such a miracle to me.
Yeah.
I could not imagine spending 21 days sober.
So in that time frame from when you started drinking alcoholically to that moment, what was the longest stretch that you had actually been able to be sober? Because that's a really big deal.
Yeah. So 3 days, 4 days at a time, because I had started trying, in Chicago.
Yeah.
But yeah, but not till the end. It had never occurred. The idea of quitting drinking. I mean, that
No,
was
you
never...
manage it, right? Or I'm gonna drink less. I'm not gonna drink this anymore. I'm only gonna drink in these times. So, yeah,
Exactly.
but try to manage it before.
Oh, for sure.
We'll do everything besides give it up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I remember thinking when they would tell me at the hospital, you have to quit, I thought, well, that's liability. They have to tell me that.
But then you hear it and you're like, okay, but for how long? You know
Exactly.
what I mean? And I remember that argument with my own mom of like, well, how long do I have to stay sober for you to like trust me again?
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, a month. And I was like, okay. And then I did it. And then it was like, that wasn't enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we didn't have this like education around what addiction was.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then it was like right back to where I was, but worse.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. They say it's progressive and fatal, and it absolutely is. My journey hasn't been linear, but that first stretch of time, I was able to stay sober after treatment for 9 months. And, the day that I got out of treatment, my mom came and sat me down, when she came to pick me up with the spiritual advisor, and told me that my dad had passed away the night before.
Oh.
Unexpectedly. And the fact that I was able to stay sober for 9 months throughout that happening, is a miracle in and of itself. And that's kind of where I saw the first miracle of my recovery program, manifest.
Yeah.
And my faith in something greater that is benevolent, took hold. And so, like I said, that set the bar for where I wanted to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was hard for me to stay sober, as it is for anybody at first, and it hasn't been linear. I've had, some short relapses, and, it's a silver lining, and it's going to say kind of messed up, to anybody that doesn't understand. It's been a blessing that I was, late stage early if I had to quit drinking.
Yeah.
And so my relapses couldn't last more than a couple of days before I was back in the hospital. And so I went to treatment a couple more times just because I'm the kind of person that needs to be completely removed from my environment, from the ability to get, alcohol or substances. And, I finally, but I stayed in my support group. That's the important part. I kept going back and kept going back and kept going back.
And what's amazing for anybody that doesn't have a support group is they're always there.
Mm-hmm.
They don't leave just because you relapse. They don't kick you out. That's, I think for both of us, it's been transformative to have that no matter what type of group. Where
for sure.
I can show the ugliest cards that I have. I can say the worst things that I think about myself or others. I mean, there are times that I've shared stuff where it's like, I don't know that I'd say that in front of literally anybody else.
Absolutely.
And knowing that, like, at the end of the day, they just want to see me alive and they just want to see me sober.
Sure.
And that's it. That's, and after a certain time frame, like, they want to see me win too. Like, we want to see people like get back on their feet and get a job and have contact with their family. And like, we want to see these like beautiful things happen and evolve in their life for like a newer, better life. But yeah, to your point, it is such a relief to have a place to come back and just still feel like you're at home.
It's instrumental to me, because I didn't have friends that didn't drink, and that didn't understand when I wanted to quit.
When, getting sober young, that's, everybody's still, you can't even date. People want to, like, can I take you out for a drink? And I used to say, no, you're going to have to get more creative than that.
That's good. That's good. Oh my gosh. I wish I'd had you as a resource when I was younger too, because, it was just social activities were just awkward and, weird.
They really
and
can.
I have a profession where people go out for drinks to take clients out
Yeah.
and all that. But you know what I also realized? I was so worried, when I first, entered recovery that and I was so ashamed of my alcoholism and what I'd done.
Sure.
And I just knew that people were gonna see me and know somehow, that one's an alcoholic.
I know.
But when
we're
you go
so
out,
wrapped up in ourselves.
oh yeah, and so filled with shame. And what I realized is only other alcoholics are worrying about what's in somebody else's drink when they go out. And it's usually because they want you to have the same kind of fun. I know for me, when I was calling for shots at the end, of the night, back when my drinking was social, I just wanted other friends to have as much fun as I was having.
Right.
And I never understood why you would say no. Like, why would anybody want to control their drinking?
Oh, yeah.
That sounded horrible to
me. We used to take turns, like, telling people it was our birthdays to get free shots and, like, share them amongst us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just what you did. But what I love now, because you mentioned about, like, the career part of it. And in what I do today for my job, I travel a lot. I go to a lot of conferences. And I have a couple of conference buddies that look out for me. And I love that. I love that I don't need, like, help, if that makes sense. But I love that I have people who, like, don't question it. They know that I'm sober. There was a guy that was really friendly. There was a group of us and, like, ordered shots all around, and it was for some, like, game that you do with and so I remember there was one for me because this guy didn't know, and somebody took it off, and they just, like, made a friend. They were like, free shot on me, who wants it? And just, like, made a friend. And I appreciated that they didn't call it out of, like, oh, you ordered an extra, she doesn't need that.
Exactly.
Just to have them swoop in. And I was like, man, I really love the community that I have today, that I've been able to build, where it's like everybody's on board, and I'm not as judged as I thought that I would be when I first got sober.
Exactly.
I'm not.
And people don't know automatically about looking at them, like, and I look back and I was like, I was so paranoid too.
I know.
And I still have friends that drink, and I can go out and socialize, and I'm not ashamed. I don't need to tell my entire story, to explain when I'm out and about. But I have no problem being like, no, but I don't drink, or I can't drink, and it's not a big deal. And I will tell you that when I first started this journey, I never thought that there would be a day that I did not wake up and think about drinking or think about the fact that I couldn't.
Yeah.
And that goes away. So to anybody just starting this journey, that eventually goes away.
Yeah.
And now I'm able to go out.
Did you think more about, I want to drink, or I'm sad that I can't have a drink?
It was kind of a combination of both, because I knew that I needed to be sober.
Okay. Because I didn't want the drink. I was just upset that I couldn't have it. I had this, like, envy in me.
Oh, I had definitely had the envy, but there were, I dealt with some mental health things too. And for a long time, that was the coping mechanism that I knew would work immediately, but also what I knew, after I reached that point of alcoholism, is that every time I took a drink, every time, my life burned down. And I'm the kind of person that would just, stand back and watch it, because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And the only thing that would solve that or stop it in its tracks is stopping drinking again. And so
that sounds exhausting.
It is, and you get sick and tired of getting sick and tired. And, I'm grateful that I've been able to stay sober the vast majority of the time, since I was, 26, but that's come with trials, and every time I drank, it got worse, and the consequences got worse. And, it's been over 8 years now since I've had a drink, but my sobriety date is 2 years ago.
Sure.
So, I picked up another substance for a week, and, took some medication, and it was to alter the way that I felt. And so I felt the need to restart my date, and that was hard after working so hard.
That integrity is amazing to me, because I just feel like as addicts, we didn't have that for
No.
so long. You would have justified that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And by you, I mean like me.
Oh, no, absolutely. You know, it would have been like, well, I am anxious.
Yeah.
And this helps, and it's a medication. And, you know, I mean, it's, and it was just a week. But being in my recovery journey, you know, I've learned to have a conscience, and I've learned to have, you know, some of that integrity.
Yeah.
And
because we talked about, like, I had picked up another substance at some point as well, and mine was, I didn't realize. So my first year of not drinking, I was using other substances, and I had a really big and honest conversation with my mentor about that. And what I realized was the relationship that I was in, when that ended, I no longer felt the need for it. And she was like, that, I kind of went through like, was this addiction, or was this just a coping skill that I didn't know how to handle as a sober person?
For sure.
And that changed my perspective on it. And then I ended up using something that I didn't know had a substance in it. And there were like not these negative consequences. It wasn't a big deal to chuck it. It was one of those things where, like, I, you know, coming forward, obviously, like with a group of people and saying, like, this is what's been going on. I did this thing, you know, talking to my husband about it. And I ended up not changing my date. And I felt so guilty. I was like, I should have to. I should, you know, all these. And they were like, why are you saying that you should? Like, let's talk about the heart behind it, the facts of it, and then like pray about it and see how you really feel. And I was like, I don't know that compromised my recovery in any way.
And that's one of the things that I love, is there are so many paths, and we each have individual circumstances. Right? Like, there's a not knowing there, and there's.
But if I felt ashamed, I would feel so uncomfortable saying that to you and being like, well, she did it, which means obviously I should do it, and like I'm in the wrong, and she's gonna walk away and be like, this girl needs to.
Absolutely not.
But that obsessive thought pattern.
Oh, for sure. It's all in the thinking, and I've had that my entire life.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, for me, it was, I knowingly picked up a medication that I have known for a long time does a lot. What it does, the same thing basically alcohol does for me. It wasn't mine. I took it intentionally to basically, you know, get myself to not feel, to not be present, you know. And I think that is what, you know, that guilt and that knowing that I took it for the same reason that I drank. And it did the same reason, you know, and I saw, you know, pretty immediate consequences. And, you know, what I love is that there's like a wide umbrella for recovery and for journeys. And it's so individualized and so such an individual and internal, you know, path. And, you know, for me, I have friends that have support groups. I have friends that don't, have friends that have, you know, church's faith. I have so many friends that have gone their route to getting clean and sober. And the point is, at the end, that you're clean and sober, and that, you know, your life is improved.
Right. You
know, and that you're no longer a detriment, you know, to yourself or to society or, you know, I mean, because that it's true, you know, and, I've done a lot of things that I used to be ashamed of, but I don't regret my past necessarily. You know.
So can we talk about that?
Sure.
Because this just blew my mind when I got sober, and I heard people say like that we won't regret the past, we won't want to shut the door on it. And I was like, that's the craziest thing that I've ever heard of. What do you mean you don't regret those things? What do you mean you don't want to just like dig a hole, throw it in there, bury it, walk away, and like toss the map? I don't understand that at all. So what does that mean to you?
So I'll tell you, the first recovery meeting I ever went to, I was 23. My mom had suggested it might be a good idea.
Okay.
You know, and by this point I knew that there was just something kind of off, you know, and once you get that in your head, it kind of starts picking at you. But I remember it was this 150 person, you know, room in Chicago. And I just thought, people are saying things that you just don't say in public. You know, we're from the deep South. You know, a lot of it is.
That's ugly.
It is. That's ugly. We put that away and
ugly.
we don't tell that to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, they're saying this in front of her. It's just strange to me. But, coming in and actually going through my process, I realized that my drinking is similar to a lot of people's that reach that point. And something that definitely helped me go, above and beyond some of my shame is the first time I went to a recovery meeting in Chicago, and I heard a woman talk about the way that she drank, and it was the way that I drank. Yeah. And she said it without shame, and she said it, and I realized that can be, a platform for helping people, because a lot of people are in so much shame.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, nobody else drinks like this. It's so pathological. It's so, I literally at the end, it was about me being able to crawl into a bottle and just get into myself, and preferably I like to be off the grid. Yeah. And but to me now, going through and not regarding my past means that I don't live in it.
Yeah.
And that I'm not ashamed the way that I was. And again, not everybody in the general public gets to know these nitty-gritty things about me. I mean, I guess if you wanted to, now that I'm on video, somebody really wanted to know. But it's there if I need to help somebody. And I've had more than a few friends and colleagues even come to me and say, how do you not drink? And what happened? And I can share these things.
Yeah.
And a lot of times what I realized, the things that I was so ashamed of, other people have done.
Yeah.
And you hear everything in these journeys.
Yes.
And
you hear things we wish we wouldn't have.
Exactly.
But then you hear that, you're like, for me, it's either, oh, thank God I can relate. Oh, thank God I can learn from your mistake.
Exactly. Yeah.
And either way, there's gratitude.
Absolutely. And that I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. I'm not excluded from anybody's negative consequences by any means.
I've heard, an acronym for YET is you're eligible to. And if this is what I do, and if I'd ever picked up, a hard drug, I know that those yets would happen.
Right.
I know that I would have that personality.
Yep.
And drugs these days, it's you try it, you experiment one time, and you're done.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that when I went to school and when I was in my experimentation phase, that these were not common. They weren't readily available. I didn't know people at that point that did them. And these days, you just can't mess around. It's like mess around and find out, but it's fatal.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things and one of the reasons that I think these platforms are so important now.
Yeah.
Is because not everybody understands that.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's shows about it. Like there's some things, like I've seen in recent years, so many people that are like sober and then they relapse or they start using again and then they like overdose so fast.
Absolutely.
And that's so scary to me.
And sometimes after years.
Yeah.
Clean or sober, and we see it with celebrities. We see it, I've seen this in friends.
Because like you said, the disease is progressive. So we're even if, some people, I used to be like, oh, my tolerance is just really high. But, the people that are lightweights or whatever, those are usually people that don't like participate that often. So they haven't built up this like tolerance. Their body, responds a little differently, a little more aggressively to it. And I know how I used to drink. I am scared of what that would look like if I picked up where I left off. That's probably why you were back in the hospital.
Absolutely.
That's because we pick up where we left off.
Absolutely.
And we can't do that anymore. And I think that's why that's so prevalent. And then you add like drugs on top of it and like what's out in the streets. And that's a whole other topic for another day that I would love to dive into, is like what's out on the streets. But it is, I think that's why when you said like the fact that I'm alive is a miracle, like anybody that is an addict or an alcoholic and is sober today, sober right now, like it truly is a miracle. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah. And I've heard that we get into this journey by seconds and inches, right? Inches, what is it? Seconds from the end of our life and inches from death, right? And that's so true. And I didn't realize that alcohol could kill at such a young age.
Yeah.
And I'm the same age as Amy Winehouse, right? And she was going through all that when I was getting sober. And I remember how sobering, pun intended, it was when she died. And she died from an overdose of alcohol. That was it, from her alcoholism. And there's a really great HBO documentary on her that it just portrays the progression and what exactly happens to you. And when you have a system around you that doesn't recognize that and that will enable, just where she was at first, when she first started her career, and just, bright and healthy and, an amazing, she has one of the best voices since the old time jazz.
Yeah.
And just it perfectly portrays exactly what can happen. And that was what was happening to me. And I'm so grateful that I got into I got a tribe, which is so important.
Yeah.
And I got a mentor, and I've had wonderful women in my life that have showed me exactly how to do this.
Yeah.
And then have stayed sober with me, a day at a time, and been there when I've messed up. Like you said, it doesn't go away, but little by little, and some of it is just habit too, and just the natural psychological formation of habit. It would be really weird for me to pick up a drink now, because it's not the norm. It's not what I do.
Yeah. And there's even some things, like, I'm a sparkling water drinker. There are some of those that I've tried and like, whoop, that tastes a little too much like a flavored vodka that I used to just drink out of the bottle.
Well, I couldn't drink Diet Coke for a little while.
Because you're used to mixing it with something and it didn't taste right.
No, it didn't taste right. And, I was really careful in the beginning of my sobriety too. Like, a tool for me. I didn't like to walk down the beer or the alcohol, dollar grocery stores.
Right? Like, it would just make me salivate.
The smell and just the seeing. When I first stopped drinking, everything reminded me of alcohol. People talk about triggers. Breathing was a trigger for me.
Yeah.
Because every waking moment of the end of my using was alcohol.
Right.
And so I was really careful at the beginning for a long time, and I didn't go out to bars, and I didn't go to places that I didn't have a reason to be, like a work event, if I wasn't, if there was alcohol involved. And I think that was really necessary, to get me to the point that now I can be around it. And not that I'm immune, because I'm always cognizant of the fact that if I'm not in a good place mentally and spiritually, that starts to look good as now. Right. But I can recognize where I am. When I go out, I have tools. I have the numbers of my sober mentor and friends, and I touch base with them. We're in constant contact.
Yeah.
If I get feeling sketchy, I'm out. I'm done. I always have my own car. And I recognize those feelings. I love
having my own car. That is not just part of my sobriety. That is just a boundary that I like to have. And I had to implement that early on, in case if I needed to get myself out of a situation and not be reliant on somebody else.
For sure.
And I would highly recommend that as a boundary for anybody else. And there have been a couple times where I have used that. It has come in handy, where it's just like, I don't think I want to be here anymore. Or, it's not even that other people were drinking. It was just like, this, I don't think for my mental health is going to be the best place for me to stay. I'm going to step out. I'm going to go for a drive. I'm going to go get a snack. I'm going to go to Sonic and get, a slushie and just like remove myself for a little bit and have a breather and feel like I was in control of something.
Yes.
And that was really important to me, because I was so out of control for so long that being in control to make the right decision felt so good.
Well, there's something empowering too, about recovery and realizing, for me, that I'm not at the mercy of other people or situations, grasp, or I'm not just going with the wind with whatever, I'm living actively and making active decisions for my life instead of being passive. And in giving up alcohol, and or other drugs, it gave me, it wasn't giving up, it was empowering me to make better decisions and to find other avenues. Faith, we mentioned, as a director of behavior instead of alcohol, because alcohol ruled me. I was a slave, and like I said, at its mercy. One of my favorite recovery mentors talks about, laying everything at the end at the altar for alcoholism, and that's what I did. And knowing that I have a choice, and knowing not only with alcohol and drugs, but with social situations or with people that are toxic, I can remove myself from the situation.
Yeah.
Like I have control over me and my actions, and that is a lot of power if I think about it.
Yeah, it is.
And that's something that I don't think I ever really enacted or ever really realized before this. And getting out and doing, things that are healthy, exercise. And I've gotten back into reading because I didn't know who I was going to be.
I feel like that's such a common thing of like getting sober, meaning like, I don't know who I am. I remember saying to somebody, I don't know what I like. And I had a therapist that said, have you considered just trying a bunch of things and seeing what sticks? And that was my anthem and like my banner for recovery for like a year and a half, where like during COVID, when I was working from home, I would go to the store and I would buy every other week, I would buy an item of food that I'd never cooked with before, and I would try new foods.
That's awesome.
And then I, did like a purge of all streaming and media, and all I would listen to were sermons, or I would go to dry bar comedy and I would listen to like
nice
holistic. I was like, I'm either gonna laugh or I'm gonna learn.
Oh yeah.
And I made a commitment to that for an entire month, and it really like changed my consumer habits like for a long, even to this day, like there are certain things where I just like don't care about anymore. And then I got back into dance, and I've stuck with that for quite some time. Like there were just so many things. I like got back into the gym and was like, got a trainer to like learn how to do things that I didn't know how to do, and just taking the time to actually enjoy my time, because some of it is, we lost so much time.
Yeah.
And not just like, I drank it away, but like I literally was so busy drinking and sitting around and worrying about my drinking and where do I hide my body. Like I realized like I wasn't really I didn't know anything about me or what my hobbies would be, and I forgot that I was allowed to have them.
Yes.
And I went pedal to the metal on my hobbies, and I had a lot of fun. Like I went hiking. Chattanooga's beautiful for that. So I was like, I'm going to go to every hiking spot that I can find around here. And I did. I went to all of them.
We need to go hiking at some point. I'm still looking for sites and places.
Like I did that for a while. I tried so many things. I tried like a painting class. I took different classes for things just to see what I learned a lot more things that I'm bad at than good at. And I was willing to fail at those and not be embarrassed. And I remember like a mentor telling me, okay, so you're not good at something. What does that mean? She was like, that's like a really stupid thing to be upset about. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is, huh? And she was like, did you have fun? And I said, yeah. And she was like, so what's the problem? And I just like, I forgot that I was supposed to have fun. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, for me, it was like, and I'm still working on that. If I don't think I'm going to be good at it, or if I don't think I can
then I don't want to try it. I don't want to look like an idiot.
And what is the worst that could happen? But that's kind of the way I was raised too. Like I said, I'm an only child. Mom literally put all of her eggs in one basket, literally. And I told her that I would send her the link to this, so I'm sure she's gonna be interested in this. Hi, Mom. But she put so much energy into raising me and wanting to, me to have experiences and learn
and
to do
be
things.
The best.
Yes, exactly.
Because they know that we're capable.
Yes, exactly.
And it's like, you know what, turns out I can't do anything I put my mind to, and that's okay.
And that's fine, you know, but I remember when I was younger, her telling me, you know, it's all right. I'm okay if you don't do well at something.
Right.
But I'm not okay knowing that you have the potential to be the best and not, you know, and to her, I think it was just, you know, kind of a product of this child, you know, you see the best.
Yeah.
You know, her thinking that I could really do anything that I put my mind to, and a lot of things I could. But some things, you know, just I'm not that talented. I'm not a great artist. I can't draw a straight line to save my life.
Yeah. I dropped out of art class, like when they gave us the supply list. I was like, I don't even know what some of this is. I'm not doing this, and I dropped out.
I hate. They always have art therapy in treatment centers, and I remember thinking, I'll be damned if I make another Mod Podge like collage board.
I never made it that far. I did art therapy. I tried that too. That was one of the things I tried, and I had to like make a portrait of what my journey looked like.
Yes, these are common activities.
And I remember being like so overwhelmed. I was like, the possibilities are endless. And she was like, yes, and I was like, that's a bad thing.
Yeah, no, that's overwhelming, and I don't even want to start it. You know, and you know, I get to address some of these behavior habits, you know, with tools I learn in recovery too. You know, and like I said, I draw resources from everywhere I can.
Yeah.
You know, from counseling, from you know other you know programs, from you know, books, and I can use that to my benefit in pretty much the broad area of mental health or my recovery journey, you know, and so I've learned a lot of getting better at that, trying things and not being the best or even failing. And I'm going to tell you, it is the result of, you know, my mom used to tell me when I was younger, if you're trying, you're dying, just do it, you know, and, the only thing that has really been true of in my life is recovering, getting sober. And I've had to keep going and had to, because I want to live now.
Yeah.
You know, and I've had to, every time I've failed, I pick up, I get back on the horse and I do it.
Yeah.
You know, because my life depends on it.
It does.
You know, and it took me to that for me to start realizing, like, it's okay if I don't do it okay at first. It's okay if I don't do it well at all ever. And I just decide this isn't for me. But, you know, something that I've enjoyed is getting to know myself, you know, as an adult and knowing what I enjoy again. You know, a lot of extracurriculars were required and mandated activities for me when I was younger. And I'm grateful for them now. I played violin for, you know, 16 years. And I remember I was a cheerleader in high school too. I remember taking my violin and putting it under the bleachers and being like, don't tell people I play violin, Mom. But I'm grateful for that now because I can still pick it up and hammer on Vivaldi.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I'm grateful that I tried. Yes. I'm not musically inclined, but boy, I gave it a good go.
Yeah. You know, and I had parents and a mother that realized that these things were important.
Yeah.
You know, and paid for lessons and paid, you know, because that stuff isn't cheap.
No.
And
so what do you think that like taking your life experience and then taking your addiction experience and where you are right now in recovery, what do you think recovery has given back to you? It's that your addiction took away.
Oh, it's given me a life. I mean, I don't think, you know, I know people that don't have addiction in their present or past maybe can't understand. My life was nothing. You know, people say it's so small. My life was literally at the end, like drinking, passing out, waking up, drinking, passing out, waking up, you know, and it took everything from me. You know, like I was talking about earlier, I laid everything in the altar of my alcoholism, you know, and some of that is just what comes, but it's given me back the opportunity to live a full life, you know, and that doesn't mean that I'm not still working on things.
Right.
But you know, like we were saying, the ability to get back in the dance, exercise is big for me now. That's a huge outlet for me.
Yeah.
You know, when I get keyed up and outlets are important.
They are.
You know, hobbies are important.
Yeah.
Like you said, because there are 24 hours in a day to, well, you know, if you're sleeping 8 hours, which I don't always do, but there's a lot of time to fill. You know, and reading, I was a huge reader when I was younger, and I've gotten back into that. It's given me a full life. It's given me people back into my life. It's given me a social life. It's given me, you know, better friends than I could ever imagine. They're not just drinking acquaintances or drinking buddies. Yeah. You know, I have full relationships, and it's given me the ability, to maintain those and do the hard things, like say I'm sorry when I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And say, not only I'm sorry, but like, this is what I did and I apologize for it. And this is what I wanted to do to change this behavior.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes a while because I'm one of those that still tries my own way and will, run into a brick wall a couple of times.
Sure.
And it's given me actual supportive, people in my life and the ability to live, in a way that I'm proud of, for the most part.
Yeah. So if somebody is maybe watching this and is in like that early stage where they don't know who they are yet, what advice would you give them, or what advice were you given that was impactful for you that you would like to pass along, that tribal knowledge?
Sure. Pick up things that you did when you were younger, and things that you always wanted to explore, and maybe you'll still appreciate it, and maybe you'll find that's not for you anymore. A lot of what you've done, it's just try new things. I really admire that, and just jumping in head first, because I'm still one of those people that will procrastinate and say, oh, I really want to do this, and I really want to do this. And I don't find time, but I have as much time as anybody.
Sure.
But it's taking advantage of that. And, just like, I think, like you said, just trying things, because there was a lot that I enjoy that I didn't know that I would enjoy.
Yeah.
It's the opportunity to build a new self, or to build on the characteristics that I had when I was younger, and the things that I appreciated about myself. And the self-esteem and self-worth was always hard for me.
Yeah.
And
sure.
It's the ability to build that. And it's kind of exciting if you think like, I'm gonna get sober. I have a whole new slate to start with.
Right.
And sometimes for me, things had to be burned to the ground to rebuild, because I needed to rebuild completely. And that's an exciting prospect when I looked at it like that. It can be overwhelming, but it's actually kind of exciting too.
Yeah, there's freedom in that.
There is absolutely freedom.
There's so much freedom.
And I think that freedom is probably one of the things you asked me what recovery put back into my life or what it given me. And it is freedom. I'm no longer a slave, to the whims of what I necessarily want to do all the time, or, mostly to alcohol.
Yeah.
Or substances. And that's huge, that's what people have fought and died for. Throughout history and civilizations, and I have that now.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that everything is great all the time or everything is perfect at all. Life still happens because it happens to everybody.
Yeah.
But I have the freedom to choose what I'm going to do about it and the way that I'm going to look at it. Like I said, it takes time and trying still. I have these character liabilities that don't necessarily serve me well. But another thing recovery has given me is the freedom to look at those and to choose to, like, these are the behaviors I'm going to use to discard them.
Right. And we didn't have that choice when we were drinking.
No, not at all.
Much less like the self-awareness to like put it on the table.
I barely had the will to live, much less
to be like, wow, I can be really selfish in this situation. I'm going to not exercise this.
Exactly. And I didn't realize how selfish I was either.
Oh, I did.
Because I was miles away and I didn't think, oh, my alcoholism addictions is
and yet we get
family.
Sober and we think that everybody's looking at us. Like it goes right back to that thing where it's like we were just so absorbed in our
Exactly. And what I've learned too in recovery is that I always thought that being self-involved or like self-seeking or, self-centered was egotistical, when it was egotistical in like a boastful way.
Yeah.
Or, prideful way. I'm better than anything. But the other side of the coin is if I'm feeling self-pity and a lack of self-worth and thinking I'm at the bottom of the pile and everybody is, better, like that's a form of ego too. It's still being involved in self. And that's something I have to watch out for.
Yeah.
That's been a lifelong thing.
Toggle. I'll just flip it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I that moderation, everything in moderation is just
what's the concept of balance, moderation? I'm like, can you please use that word in a sentence for me? Because I don't understand,
I know.
So, and it can be beneficial and it can be absolutely detrimental if I'm not using it the right way.
Right.
So, and luckily I have people around me. Sobriety's given me that to be honest and be like, have you thought about pulling back in this area or, working a little harder in this area?
Yeah.
So.
And gosh, we are coming up on time here. It's been an hour. But speaking of community and having those people, I would love to let anybody who's listening to this have an option to get in touch with you if they're looking for community.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
could you share the best way for somebody to like reach out to you if they are searching?
Sure. Facebook, Instagram are always good options. Phone number, and I'll give myself because I'm
well, that's up to you. So if you want to like your name of how they can find you, and if you want to drop your cell, you would be the first one to do it. But I'm not liable for your message.
Oh no, absolutely not, absolutely not. And I am free with the block too, and the remove if I need to. Boundaries are another thing that I've gotten. But you can reach me. My cell is 503-717-3319. Shoot me a text. I usually, I'm pretty careful about anonymity, in general.
Sure.
But I'll go ahead and say, this is one of those barriers that needs to be broken too. My name is Laura Vinson, Vinson. And that's the first time I think I've ever said that on a platform, So look me up on Facebook or on Instagram, shoot me a message. Please feel free to reach out because like I was saying, like I've learned how my past can help others.
Yeah.
And it's really tough in early recovery.
Yeah.
And you need all the resources and people around you that you can have.
Yeah. We just weren't meant to do it alone.
No, absolutely not.
Well, Laura, this has been a fantastic episode. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Ginger, our guest.
Ginger. Yeah.
And to everybody else, we will see you next time.
Bye.